Hello and welcome to the Heartbound Editing Podcast. I am Rebecca Hartwell and the developmental editor behind Heartbound Editing. It is my goal to help authors turn their stories into bestsellers or masterworks that can change their worlds. I am so excited for this episode as it's the first one where we have two guests on at the same time. Evelyn Shine, author of The Librarian's Gargoyle, book one in the Stone Awakening series, and Erin Branch, author of Die Curious, a sapphic tabletop RPG romance. Thank you both so much for being here.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you.
Ev, why don't you go first and just tell us a little bit more about you as an author?
Okay. I've been writing since 2019. I published my first book in 2021. And Erin and I actually met in your critique group, in your fantasy critique group, where we both asked the big question, is it okay to have smut in here? And I came out late in life, just in the past year. And after we started dating and met in real life, and then she convinced me that I should be writing sapphic books. And we looked at all my characters and went, yeah, we could just change the pronouns here and we'd have sapphic books, wouldn't we? So that's what I did. So Librarian's Gargoyle was originally written as an anthology piece. And the anthology that it was going into, while that was a very sweet romance, the anthology it was going into had a lot of dark stories in it, and I didn't think it fit. So I decided to just hold on to the piece for now. And it was just literally just sitting on my hard drive. And she's like, you should pull that piece back out and add 40,000 words and make it sapphic. And I was like, all right. And so far the reviews back have been from the ARC readers have been really promising. They've been mostly 5-star reviews. So I'm super happy about that. And we'll see how it goes. And of course, we were lucky. We have the beautiful covers from Madison Brake.
Those
So,
are gorgeous covers, and I was so happy when I saw both of them.
lovely, lovely art. And she's a great human being to work with as far as working with an artist. So
Lovely.
right.
So, Erin, what about you? I know you have an interesting background in both indie and traditional writing.
Yes, I also came out late in life, and I'm still on good terms with my ex-husband and my mother-in-law, but I actually wrote Christian fiction with my mother-in-law for a long time. I think we have 7 total co-written books, and I was always into writing, always loved it, but when she was snowed under and overwhelmed, she helped me learn the craft and all of those, nitty-gritty details. And so I did not realize how lucky I was getting to write traditional, because I did not realize it was so difficult to break in. But then I quickly realized that as I was looking at writing my own stuff, and realized there's always a lot to learn. So I had written a book that I think you read, maybe, Rebecca, I can't remember, in the critique group, that was a YA fantasy that was a sapphic fantasy romance that I queried. I had some interest, but didn't end up getting picked up. And during that process, I wrote Die Curious. And the whole goal is I'm going to write something that is the most fun for me to write. Like, I'm going to have the most fun ever while writing a book, because this querying is stressful. And that book was what resulted. And there's a lot of really funny parts.
It's a lot of fun.
And I have a copy, but it
Lovely.
has a gorgeous cover, also from Madison Brake. And it's been a great journey. And then during that, and I guess around the release, we've been more involved with groups like GCLS, which is a literary society for sapphic books. Got to connect with a lot of indie authors, and it's just been like, this is where I want to be and where I need to be. And I'm just thrilled to get to do that now.
Very cool. I love how much variety you have in your background. I'm sure that's going to serve you well going forward in whatever you decide to do. So yeah, I definitely got to read the early part of Die Curious. I don't think I ever got to critique the full book, but I think it was part of a submission for one of the critique groups that I run. And your humor in it was so much fun, and I loved that immersion into a culture that reads a lot, but I don't often see represented in books, which was a lot of fun. So why don't you just tell us a little bit more about this debut story of yours and give us an overview and a bit of the blurb?
So just to talk a little bit about this book, and I'm so glad you asked, Die Curious, I didn't want anyone to be confused, because it has a fantasy inspired cover, but it is a contemporary romance, a sapphic tabletop RPG romance. And I just wanted to write people that are like me, like into nerdy stuff. And like you mentioned, maybe they like to read, but there's not a lot of characters like this. And it was a lot of fun. So the main character is, and ironically, is nothing like me in real life. But the main character, June, is a streamer. And get like she streams D&D games and an influencer, but she has not done well enough to be making a lot of money yet. And the book starts out when she, at age 26, has just moved back into her parents' basement. Which is a cliche that I'm sure a lot of us around our age can relate to because it's tough out there. But she's kind of at this quarter life crisis, restarting her life. She's just broken up with Parker, who was her ex-fiance that she was with from when she was really young. And he plays into the book in some funny ways. But she meets up with Nova, who was her BFF in high school. And Nova has a lot that they are keeping to their chest that has gone wrong in the past with June. And the book starts where they're at this point of contention. There's a bit of secret identity going on where involving one of the D&D characters that they're playing, and somebody is not letting the group know all of what's going on there. So that was a lot of fun. And I got to use a lot of the setting from where I'm from in North Georgia, because it adds an extra layer of complication when you grow up queer in the South. And things are better. Like Atlanta is there, it's a great place to visit or live if you are LGBTQ+, but there are still a lot of challenges, especially if your family is religious, even lightly religious like June's. And I got to play with that a bit while it's still being a really lighthearted book.
Lovely. I would love to know how you came up with your title because I feel that is so clever and fun and just a great example of someone
Puns are
picking a title that is
automatically
perfect for the
funny.
story.
So we have a thing where we say puns are automatically funny. I think that was from Gideon the
It
Knight.
was.
But anyway, Julie, who is in your group as well, who was one of our critique partners, came up with Die Curious. And I said, I'm using that. Is that okay? And she gave me her blessing that we bounced a bunch of ideas back. Julie helped us with the anthology that we did in June, which is The Pull of the Tide, which is a bunch of 10 sapphic stories. But
I'll
yeah,
definitely be asking about that more in depth later on.
great.
So, Ev, why don't you tell us a little bit about your stories? I've gotten to read a lot more of your work, which was delightful. I gave you feedback on Wild Soul
Yeah.
and I think three others. You have 6 full-length books and 4 novellas out, which is impressive if you only got your start in 2019. One of the
Just
books that I
keep
got
her
to
publishing.
critique for you was Librarian's Gargoyle, but it has changed so much from the version
It
that I
has.
read. So I would love to hear your blurb for it and then to hear a little bit more about how those massive changes came about. I know you've already touched on that a little bit in your intro.
So the blurb for it is magic is real and Viola is going to prove it. Viola is a Parisian librarian by day and a parkourist by night. The last thing that she wants in an arranged marriage, ick, is a man, double ick. If Viola can fund the library and keep it open, she might keep her job and freedom, might being the key word. To make matters worse, strange magical shades keep attacking her, threatening her physical safety. Viola knows that magic is real and wants to be a part of that world, but she can't find a way out of her mundane life. She can only vent her troubles to her confidant, a lady gargoyle, though the statue has never spoken back. Boudica is a creature without a soul, a fact as steady as the stone that she's made of. Yet when the mage who created Boudica gives her a task that requires her to appear human, she's feeling new soft things for the librarian who likes to climb Paris in her slippers. Viola could never love Boudica in her true form, but the gargoyle finds herself putting her heart on the line to help keep the library open and help Viola discover the magic that will pull her into a new world of freedom. So this is a book that I really enjoy, like turn of the century, late 1800s to the early 1900s. So this one's set in 1912 in Paris, which a lot of my books are centered around Paris because city of romance, and just it kind of started there, and I tend to circle things around there, and I've done a lot of research on the city. This kind of has that feel of the Superman love triangle for two, where there is
Cool.
a hidden identity. Boudica is both the gargoyle who has been her best friend her entire life, but she doesn't know that she's real. And this new person that she met at the library that she thinks is super hot. So it kind of has that kind of feel to it. When the story opens, Viola just lost her job at the library because it's getting closed due to lack of funding. This Lord is taking it over, and she is absolutely no good feelings about this person. She knows he is going to wreck everything. And she is getting married off by her family. She is the last of 7 children, and she's getting married off and is not happy about it because they picked a man. So she is frantically trying to research out magic in the library. She's got a hint of it in her life that was given to her by her mysterious grandmother. And she's trying to figure out at this point where the magic is and use that to pull her out of this life that she's watched all her sisters be put into, whether they wanted to or not, and she doesn't want that same experience for herself. Boudica, on the flip side of the story, is discovering what it's like to be real. Gargoyles are made without souls, and she feels alive every time Violet tells her stories, which she's told her entire life. And that's one of the things as the story grows, is that Boudica is realizing that she can be real outside the context of what she was created for, that things can change. So I wanted to make something that was a monster romance, but a little bit cozy with a tiny dash of spice in it, and something that was just sort of comfortable to sit down and read when you just wanted a warm cuddle.
I love that. That's a great little mix to have going there.
Yeah.
I've just finished reading the ARC version, so you'll be getting my review
Oh,
at some
great.
point in the near future. And we're recording this ahead of time, but when I release this episode, you will have just released that book, and I'm so excited to cheer you on through that.
Thanks.
I know you mentioned when you started writing. I would love to hear a little bit more about what drew you to it. Like what got you started?
Um,
What was your inspiration or your motivation there?
So I had insomnia problems, and I got
Mm.
tired of staring at the ceiling all night long. So I started writing, and I discovered fanfic at the same time. I didn't know fanfic was a thing, embarrassingly enough, until 2019.
That's
Didn't know.
kind of an impressive stretch of being
Yeah, right.
oblivious to that whole
So
world. Yeah.
I was playing like a romance video game, and I wanted more content, and I like did a Google search and was like, oh, what is this fanfic thing? Which is hilarious because it's been around for years. I just didn't know. And then I wanted a story, and I asked one of my favorite writers to write it, and they're like, why don't you write that yourself? Which I found is a very common answer. So I did, and people loved it. And then every time I couldn't sleep, I just sat up and wrote. And then 2020 happened, which I don't have to say anything about that, but I was out of work for 18 months, and I wrote 12 books. And then I picked 3 of them, the 3 series one, and polished it up. Probably published it too soon, but that's okay. We all make mistakes. And went ahead, and people enjoyed that. And then I just kept writing from there, because every book that I write, I get more ideas, and my entire worlds are connected. Like the main character from my vampire series, which is a MMF, is actually like has a cameo in this one. Like she finds his book on magic, and that was one of her realizations, that magic is real. Here's the book to prove it. And he wrote the book, so he has a very small cameo
I
in
love that.
this story.
When she was talking about fleshing it out from a novella to a full-length story, she's like,
Yeah.
what am I going to write about? How am I going to do this? But she wastes none of those words. Every single bit is just like all of these interesting details from her world, including Durand showing up.
Yeah.
It's just, I love it so much.
Mhm.
And we get to see new depth of these characters versus the short story version.
Yeah. And because I can never write, like I have a hard time writing a single book. This one already has like a story arc that'll carry through 4 books. So
I
like,
relate to that so hard.
yeah, I'm just like, okay. And we've got, the next romance will be between Mirabelle and Mirabelle and Ariel. And that's going to be a like curvy girl, sporty girl, sunshine and grumpy trope going on. And then the one after that, and that's the apothecary's gargoyle. And then I plan to do the sorceress's gargoyle after that, which is Chantel, who is the librarian, who briefly shows up in the first book too. So, with one of the other gargoyles. So it's just going to go through. And then the last book will be Xander, who is non-binary. So that'll be
Lovely.
my last romance. And I have Erin's help there to help me
There
very
is sensitivity.
sensitivity read
Yeah.
that one.
No, Xander is a really fun character because they have a lot of Howl vibes. You remember from Howl's Moving Castle, the movie?
Yeah.
Um, there's a lot of mystery going on, but you can tell even in this book that they are not telling everything.
Yeah.
So Erin, I would love to hear about how you got into writing and where your inspiration came from and how you ended up writing your first piece.
So, like I mentioned before, I was writing, I guess, kind of professionally before I was really letting myself explore the stories that I wanted to tell. And I did write, and I did come up with and write the plots for those books as well. But it was always kind of with training wheels on. And I had this story that was the fantasy that I queried, but I have not published yet. That it kind of demanded to be told. And the characters are sapphic, which for viewers who maybe not be as familiar with that word, that is any woman-loving woman or woman-loving non-binary person, basically non-men. And I had not come out yet. And it was like I wrote this book and then it just kind of was a cascade effect. I think at one point I called it Pandora's book because it revealed a lot about myself that I was kind of in denial about. So it's I think for a lot of authors, like the books just demand to be written. Like we have to do it regardless of the money or the marketability. Like these stories have to be told. And so that's where I was on that. And I had talked a little bit about Dicurious was just the most fun story I could come up with. And I think from here, it's like all kinds of possibilities. Because I love writing both contemporary romance and fantasy. And we have a fantasy, the second fantasy anthology coming up, and I'm excited to write a piece in that. That'll be a tie-in to Dicurious. So.
Yeah. I think
Cool,
one
I'm
of the
excited for
biggest
that.
things too is just there wasn't enough represent like one of the reasons we're both late life bloomers is there wasn't enough representation. We didn't know that, it was possible to be gay at some points
Right.
in our life because you're forced into a heteronormative society. And it just kind of, I want to be visible for the rest of my life now. Like I want to write sapphic books. There aren't enough of them out there. We did 2 pop-ups so far with the sapphic pop-up, which was amazing. They do pride events and it's usually a bunch of authors getting together and selling their books at one stand. People love it because they buy a bunch of books and then the authors are all standing there to sign their books for them.
There's a lot of
And
fun,
you get to meet a lot of readers, you get to meet a lot of other authors. There's a great community out there and it's lovely. But one of the things that we hear at these pop-ups is, oh, these are books for me. I didn't know that they wrote sapphic books. And, that's kind of sad to not know that like your representation isn't out there. And I really feel like GCLS is pushing for, to see a lot more sapphic pairings, to see the sapphic pairings that are real, that it's not a lot of the
It's not
traditionally published
sanitized.
ones, sanitized sapphic books. And it's always like a pretty femme and a pretty femme.
Nothing wrong with that.
There isn't, but
For a different audience, perhaps.
Right.
yeah. And I think that we should see all the pairings. Like, sure, it's fine to have femme, but you should also have, femme non-binary. You should have trans in there. Like everything should have a place so that people can pick up a book and find themselves in it.
Absolutely.
Be entertained by characters that are like them.
Yeah.
Yes. Yes. I am all for that sort of representation of just showing people that they have a place in these kind of stories. And I love that you guys are doing so much of that. So apart from the wonderful themes of, self-identity and exploration, all of that we've already talked about, how do each of you feel that your writing has changed from the beginning to where you are now in other ways, perhaps more of the nitty-gritty craft kind of ways?
I think every book that you write, you improve, whether you want to or not. It's having groups like your critique group and other online groups really lets you have access to other authors' knowledge, because then when you receive critiques from other authors, you're getting all of the things that they've learned, and you can choose whether you want to apply it or not, but it's really helpful to get that input. And I think that With every, yeah, like I said, with every book, it changes, and I feel like I'm a better writer. Even every sentence I write is, we're just moving up.
Yeah, I mean, it goes with every art form. Like I was an artist first, um, like graphic design and pottery, like 2-dimensional and 3-dimensional. And you got to put your 10,000 hours in, and with writing even more, I think.
Yes.
And the more classes you take and the more you find groups that write similar things, even it's just in genre, like it was a really big boost to us to go to the conference, the GCLS conference this past July, and meet other Sapphic authors, and like really be able to, like, it's a supportive community. Like everybody reads everybody else's books. They make suggestions, they help each other out, they promote each other. It's a really strong community, and it was good to fall into that. And I think with every book you write, you learn a little bit more about that book. We're taking a class, an online class together now that's 9 months long through that community. And they basically have other well-established authors, like some of them that won awards this year, come in and teach a class, and there's homework on it. And it's really good. But not only are they teaching the class, but then they're like, my email is open if you have any questions, if you need a review of stuff. Like they're very giving, and that's what they're looking for in their students too, is that they're going to give back to the community. And I think that really helps with every book, is just to even just revisiting, even if the class is about something that you feel really solid on, there's always room for like improvement and finding something doing, and really like polishing that down until it shines.
And what I've heard too, even multi-book best-selling authors who have been doing this for decades, they will still say that they're learning, like they're still learning craft even after all of those books.
Oh, absolutely. And that's a big part of why I'm so glad to have ended up in the space that I am, because I'm currently in the middle of yet another craft book and going through it. It's like, okay, well, I've already seen that. I haven't seen that. Wait a second, that's new. I can apply that. That's going to improve my skills. And I doubt I will ever feel like I have learned everything there is to learn, because writing keeps growing, and our knowledge of it and approaches to it keep growing. And I think it is wonderful to have that mindset of just constantly improving a little bit at a time.
Absolutely.
And I mean, I
So
think we've both improved really fast, because I mean, I just checked a manuscript that I finished writing just a couple months ago. And as I was going through it, I was just like, and this is wrong, and this is wrong. And like I'm doing line level edits going through, okay, well, I can write better. Like it moves so fast. I'm like, okay, I can write this better now. And I just went through and fixed the problems, the parts that were a little rough.
Yes.
But I think it's hard sometimes. You were just talking about your new one. Can I say it? Okay.
Yeah.
Kicks and Kisses is her new one coming out this spring. And she was reading through it, and she was just like, I could write this better. And I'm like, then write it better. Like the words are already down there. Just tweak them a little bit. It's great.
Yes. I'm turning in edits to my editor on that on Monday. And so it's that, that first, I guess, completed draft process. Like it was a NaNoWriMo book, and so it needed a lot of edits, a lot of self edits before being turned to an editor. So
Yeah.
well, that's a great segue into my next topic, which is editing is the part that I am by far the most interested in, not just as an editor, but as an author, because I find that that is where the most sort of color goes into the story and where it becomes what I want it to be. So I would love to hear from both of you about what your self-editing process is like, and then we can move on to talking about that sort of feedback process.
You're gonna go
I
first
will.
on
I
that?
love talking about this too. I feel like editing really makes it shine. Like it's good to get it all down and get your first draft down, and it's okay that the first draft sucks. As for me, there are people who are plotters and people who are pantsers. I started out kind of more in the middle, but now I am definitely on the plotter side after learning more about craft. So I'll write it to my outline, and after I'm done, I'll check it back to make sure that the beats are happening where I want them to. And you don't have to, I don't mean that as like, you're not writing to a formula, but there are certain, just like when we hear music, there are certain plot beats that are satisfying to us, just like there are certain scales that are satisfying to our ears. It's not boring. You can write a million different ways with those same beats. So I go back and I check that. I think that's reverse outlining. And then I will look and make sure that my goal and motivation and conflict are set in every chapter. Because if I'm bored, the reader is super bored. So each chapter needs to kind of build on the other and go into the next. And that is what will pull readers through a book. Um, and sometimes this stumbles a bit. Sometimes what's exciting to me doesn't seem as exciting to the editor, and I'll get suggestions. But I really like my editor. I use Charlie Knight, and they are a non-binary person and also do really good sensitivity edits as far as for diverse characters. But they give me a developmental edit and a little bit of line level edits back on the first round. And then I have another round or two of line level edits, and then the proofreading, copy editing round. And then I get all of my writer friends to help me comb it for any little typo that snuck through.
Fair. That's cool. I love the music metaphor. I'm totally going to be processing that after we wrap up here. So Ev, what about you? What's your
So
self-editing
I used
process
to be
like?
a hardcore pantser for like my first 6 novels and my first novella. And then I had to write a short story that I had to hit all those beats in 15K words. And I tightened my stuff up really, really fast. And Erin actually gave me an Excel spreadsheet with the beats on it and like what page they needed to hit it by. And I was like, for the first time, and I was like, oh, I don't like this, but I'll give it a try. And I actually found that it was very helpful. It makes my writing a lot cleaner. So I now do use a beat sheet and an outline. Like I have a vague idea of what I want to do. And sometimes I may go off the rails, and that's fine. And then I go back and fit it back to the beats that are expected and add the twists in there. But I do heavily, like I already know what's going to happen before I put my pen to the page, and I know what's going to happen in every chapter, and I know it's how it's going to go. And then in my second draft, I will go through and tidy things up. But I've gotten to the point now where I write pretty clean because I don't want to cut 60,000 words out of something because I spent hours writing that. And at this point, like it's money. I'm leaving money on the table if I did that much rewriting, and that's what it comes down to. I tend to listen to my work, like after passing it around to people. I like listening to my work a lot. I just honestly use natural readers,
Read it aloud.
and we do read it aloud to each other.
Yeah, we took a road trip actually up to Maine, and we read the entirety of Librarian's Gargoyle.
Yep.
We took turns driving and reading,
and then we just
caught a
made
lot.
edits, and we caught a lot on that. But that was fun because it was a long drive, and we were just like, all right, we're doing this.
That's
But
fun.
yeah, I think the reading it out loud with a person, and then like my final edit, I read through with on the robo read. I always use the robo read, like even the last draft when I've already formatted it. I'm like, okay, and now we're putting our headset on and active listening. As far as editors, I found that when I was writing my like hetero novels, I was using an editor that I was pretty happy with, but the last 2 sapphic books that I submitted to them, I kind of felt like they phoned it in. I will not say who it was. So I think it may be they were having a bad day, or it may just be that sapphic isn't their thing. So I did find a sapphic editor that I'm trying out for my next book. And I was planning on switching anyway, because I want to support people in the sapphic community. And I feel that they will have a better grasp on what the expectations are in those books and make sure that I hit them.
Well, I think it's also important to have an editor who is passionate about your story and
Yeah.
your words and what you want. And that way their vision for your piece is the same as yours,
Yeah.
and you can work together to make it polished.
Yeah, because that was one thing, is using an editor that does like all the genres is kind of like, it's great because they do all the genres. But on the flip side, I feel like you'll get a better book if you have someone that is like super familiar and up to date, like that their editing things are up to date with like what trad is doing, what the big names in trad are doing right now.
Yeah, that they're doing that work, like you were saying, reading craft books. You want your editor to be always improving. So.
Yeah.
You brought up so many great points. I love that you pay attention to twists in the editing. I think that's something that a lot of other authors miss, is they think they have to write in the twists. And I'm glad that you brought up that you can actually edit in the twists by tweaking things after it's already been drafted. And you are absolutely correct that having a passion for the kinds of stories that you're editing makes such a big difference because my heart is in the like the romantic fantasy and historical fantasy spaces. That's what I adore. And I can tell that I have a slightly higher caliber of feedback from my clients when I'm editing in those spaces where I'm like, ooh, I'm excited about this story. I can
Yeah.
still provide good feedback on any genre, but there
Absolutely.
is definitely a difference for the genres that I have researched because I'm writing in them, that I'm keeping up to date with comp titles on, and all of that kind of stuff that you brought up. So I'm glad you touched on all of that. So moving on from there, you've both already touched a little bit on the editors that you work with, and earlier mentioned that the three of us all met through the Fantasy Virtual Critique
Yep.
Partners group that I run. I would love to hear a little bit more about your experiences with casual feedback or peer-to-peer feedback. That could be beta readers or the critique group or anything like that, what your expectations are, and if you've had any particularly stand out really good beta readers or really bad experiences that you might want to warn authors away from.
Sure, I'll start. Your critique group was amazing. I'm trying to remember when we joined. That may have been 2021.
I think
It's
so. I think you guys were, right at the
Yeah.
beginning.
um, and I really like that you let us read an excerpt of what you're agreeing to beta read before you get it, because then you can be sure that it is something you indeed want to read. I actually met Ev in that, so she's my best beta reader, but definitely stand out.
Love it.
Yeah, but we connected through that, and it was great. And I think she's read all of my books, but
I
it's
have.
um I also met Julie, who I mentioned, help Die Curious get a title,
Mhm.
and a few other people. And so, like, the people that you read their work and they read your work, this is really personal. And a lot of us writers keep that like under wraps until you're ready to release it, and because it's not good enough and all of that. So if you're letting someone into your inner workings of your mind, you really have to trust them, and you can develop some deep friendships that will help you your whole career.
Mm.
So I think peer groups are super important. And anyone who's serious about writing should try to get involved with that,
Yeah.
although you may have to look around for a bit before you find the people that really click with you, because it can, like, genre to genre, like they need to kind of be in your genre and know your genre's expectations, so they're giving you good feedback. And it always helps too if you find someone who's done the homework already, like if they've read at least a few craft books and they know they've also read in their genre and know the expectations. That way they're not wasting their time. You're not wasting your time, but it can be trial and error.
Yeah. It's
But
a little like speed dating.
there you go.
I mean, all of what you said, and it feels like speed dating sometimes because you'll get beta readers and critique partners that you get the critique back and you're like, okay. And it's not that it's hard, it's more along the lines like, so you don't know what a point of view is, cool. And then there's
Yeah.
other times that like you get someone back that they give you really good feedback, and those are the people that you want to keep. And I always make sure when I get people like that, when they ask me to read something, I say, yeah, I'll read that for you, and I get to it as soon as I possibly can. Um, we still need to do James Pierce, but so
But yeah, creating that community, finding that community of other
yeah.
authors will help you keep going and not give up, because writing can be lonely
Yeah.
if you're trying to do it all by yourself.
And we tried to create, and I think we were
Yeah.
successful, the community with doing Pull of the Tide and writing an anthology every year. When Julie and Erin approached me to do an anthology, to do a sapphic anthology, I was on board with it. When I was younger, there was not a lot of books that featured female characters in fantasy that weren't written by
By men.
men
Yep.
and male gazed. So Marion Zimmer Bradley's Sword and Sorcerer series that came out every year from the time I was 11 years old. Now I'm going to date myself. I still have those books, and the first four are pretty beat up because I read them over and over and over again because that's all there was. Like I had already read all of the other female authors at that point ad nauseum, and now here were like these short stories that I absolutely loved digging into, and that's what I wanted to provide to the sapphic community, was to have a book every year where authors come together, and we've built like a little community together to get the books in. And then when we went to GCLS, there were a bunch of established authors that saw the cover and saw, like, it was kind of cool going out there because we were no one.
Yeah.
And we went out there, and as soon as we showed, like, we had bookmarks made of the Pull of the Tide cover, and they were like, oh, this is you. And we were like, oh, they know who
Yeah.
we are.
That's so much fun. I love that.
Yeah, it was
We
cool.
went knowing nobody, and we came back with a lot of author friends. So I
Mhm.
think like in-person events, if you can, online events, online groups like yours,
Yeah.
super important for authors.
Like showing your face and getting
Yeah.
to know people. But I was actually hesitant about the in-person events. Erin talked me into that because I was like, oh, well, you could just see these people online. You could do online events. What's the difference? It was amazing. And I would highly recommend doing in-person author events, even in this digital age, because it's more personal. It really is. And you can really, if you can travel to do it, although mask up while you're there, because everybody came home with COVID or influenza A.
Yeah.
That was your choices, or both in some cases. So we still have to mask up, but the in-person events were amazing. And we met so many new author friends. There were also readers there. The readers were in the minority. I would say it was probably like 25% readers at that event, and the rest were authors. But it was just I think it's really important to find your people.
Yes.
And your writing can really only get better from there, and just supporting each other. Like, authors aren't competing against each other.
No.
Not at all. Like, that's not how that works at all, because it will take you quite a while to write a book, and then it takes a reader one night. Like, I sent my arcs out, and like 10 hours later someone posted on Goodreads, and I was like,
that's awesome, but that took me
cool.
months to write.
That took me 6 months to produce.
Yeah.
So
Yep.
like, hope you're not waiting for book 2 to come out tomorrow.
Yeah. At least we get to give the stories to more than one person, right? So there's some justification in that. I would love to hear more about the anthology if you're willing to share about how that got started and what the process of creating it was like.
Yeah, so we weren't dating at the time that the anthology started. And it went pretty smoothly. It was us and Julie that were all together working on the anthology. Go ahead.
You got to go back in time a bit. She was in a few anthologies and made notes and was like, I would have handled this like this. I think this was frustrating.
Yeah,
and so she had all of these ways of like how to run an anthology that would be fun for authors. And I think that was
it to be more community, because the anthologies that I was in, like, they didn't really like get the authors talking to each other. So I wanted more community involved. And
just like when that person was like, if you want that fanfic, you got to write it. I was kind of like, well, if we want an anthology, you got to do it.
We got to make it. So we started with that. And there were bumps along the way. Like, it went really smoothly. And then we got all of the submissions in, and that part went smooth. And we got enough submissions in that we were able to pick the best, like the ones that we felt that were best and that fit well with the anthology's theme.
We evaluated a lot based on theme to make sure we had a variety of stories and that they all fit as a cohesive anthology. It can be difficult to get a rejection letter, and I had like my book Die Curious got rejected too. Like, I sent it to agents. So I know what that feels like, but that doesn't necessarily mean there's anything wrong with your piece. It just might not be a fit for that collection or that person.
And Erin was great at writing that letter. Because I was just like, how are we going to tell these people?
It's so good. Yeah.
Good? Yeah.
But it is good. It's good writing.
Yeah.
It wasn't as it.
And we actually took the weekend, and because that was the part of we were still in our long distance relationship. So we got a getaway cabin, which is one of those little like
micro
tiny house things that we love going to. And we read the anthology pieces to each other.
Read all the submissions.
Submissions. And that was cool. Super fun. And we just spent the whole weekend just like
planning.
Yeah, just like making notes on them and planning that out. I think the biggest problem we had was I hadn't been wide at that point. I'd only been on Kindle or on Amazon and Kindle Unlimited. So I pulled my first book in the series out of Kindle Unlimited. And it was during the time, one of the many times that Amazon was pissing me off. I think that particular time was the day I woke up to like 48 emails that they had canceled all of my ads that had been running for more than a year and a half. And I was angry.
Whoa.
Yeah, it took me about a year to not be angry. But
Fair.
I pulled the book and I was like, well, I'm not doing anything with this book right now. I said, why don't I throw it through Draft to Digital and see how that goes? And it went smooth because I didn't try to upload it to Amazon. We ran into all kinds of problems with Draft to Digital though, and
Well, it's them communicating with Amazon.
Amazon.
So
Like, and we learned that it's probably easier now that Ingram Spark doesn't charge anything. It was easier to go directly with Ingram Spark and cut Draft to Digital out, and to upload to Amazon directly.
if you're digitally releasing live, like an aggregate service like Draft to Digital is not a bad idea, but still maybe not the Amazon because they're so picky.
Yeah.
Like you should just go to them. So we learned
Yeah.
that.
Yeah.
Next year, I have the whole process written
It's-
down, so we will be.
Yeah, it'll be fine. Yeah, I think the worst part was that because we clicked the button for Amazon on Draft to Digital, that they would upload our paperback for us and sell it, which was a mistake. Our book was listed on Amazon, but a bunch of third parties jumped on it and jacked the price sky high.
Ah.
It looked like we were selling a paperback for $65.
Oh my
So we
God.
received a slew of cease and desist
Yeah.
on release day, and eventually
Yeah.
it got sorted. But next year will be much smoother because we have that process down, and it worked well for Die Curious. So
It did.
we're
Yeah,
glad to
her
have
book
that.
launch was fine. I just uploaded mine. I expect mine to run smooth. It wasn't how I wanted to experience that, but now we know better and it's fine. You know, it's
Sure.
just the third parties were aggressive
They
though.
were
Like I spent 2 days writing out cease and desist letters and
Wow.
trying to get a person on the phone at Amazon because they just all jumped on the book. And like poor Esty Simper was with us and she has Australian fans, like a lot of Australian fans. And they're like, the book is $65 in Australia. And I'm like,
no, do not buy that.
do not
Yeah.
buy that. Tell them to give me like a week. I'm trying to fix this.
That's
But yeah,
wild.
that was some crazy that I would definitely warn other indie authors about is to just upload it yourself if you're using Amazon. And who isn't? I hate to say it, they have 70% of the market. You kind of, as an indie, you have to use them.
Yeah.
So but yeah,
This is
that
great. I'm learning so much.
it was we had like so when that happened, we were staying at a cabin in northern Georgia. I came down to visit her for like 6 weeks over the summer before I moved down. And we were staying at a cabin, and the morning we woke up to the launch of the book, it was just all messed up. And we were making really fast decisions.
It was
We
tough.
were
Yeah.
completely stressed. Like we thought we were going to
It would just automate.
that everything would be automated.
should've,
We
but it did not.
we made our coffee, which would take like half an hour at the cabin because you had to grind everything and boil the water on the stove and then pour it into a fancy like pour over carafe thing. So we're like making our coffee. We're half awake. We're getting ready to sit on the porch and look at the waterfall that's next to the cabin, expecting a peaceful, lovely morning. And then we pull up our book and nothing is launched. And I'm like, and it was just like everybody took a deep breath. And then we started working and making decisions and like just trying to get everything fixed as fast as we could.
Yeah. To Amazon's credit, they did publish it very fast when we went directly to them. So
Yeah, I think we had it unsnarled in under a week, which wasn't bad. Draft to Digital kept doing well, we're going to need proof that you have the rights to copyright this. And we were like, we're just going to upload to Amazon and cut you out at this point. Like, just drop it. And they're like, well, we can't do that. I'm like, we found the delete button and we were just like, we already did it. We got this.
yeah. Yeah, that was crazy.
It was super crazy. And like, so far, have you had to deal with Ingram Sparks customer service?
No, it was
No, because everything, I would say their interface is a little bit clunky just from having to wade through it yesterday. But other than that, everything went really smoothly. So
Yes. And I could talk for a while on this subject too. If you ever want to talk about getting your book in bookstores as an indie author, did a lot of legwork. And yesterday I was super excited to see Die Curious on the shelf at a bunch of at several indie bookstores, including Karis Books in Atlanta, Giovanni's AIDS. What is that? Like, it has a long name. The LGBTQ bookstore in Philly had it and posted it on their
Yeah,
Instagram.
and
I was
she
so
didn't even
psyched.
contact them to ask them to post
They
it.
found it off Ingram Sparks catalog, so that was
That's
exciting.
amazing because your book
Yeah.
launched days ago, like less than a week ago, right?
Yesterday,
It launched
actually.
yesterday.
Your book launched yesterday. That is so
And
cool.
they had it.
They had it on
Oh
the
my
shelf.
gosh.
They posted like a thing of all the
Mhm.
new books that were coming out in October that they had in October, and hers was there, and we were both like, I was like, did you contact them? She's like, nope, this is in the wild. I'm like, this is cool.
Yeah, it was really cool.
It
That's
is cool the
fabulous.
first time. We didn't actually for Pull of the Tide. We went to
Oh.
Karis and they
Mhm.
had it on the shelf in their
So
anthology.
in Atlanta, near Agnes Scott College, there is a queer bookstore called Karis Books. They've been there a long time. They're a really awesome store, like probably my favorite bookstore.
Mhm.
And we were there because I wanted to give them some Dicurious bookmarks, and they had the Pool of the Tide on the shelf. And it was just like, it's in the
Yeah.
wild.
That's delightful.
Very exciting.
So going off from there, Erin, I know that you said you have an audiobook already in production for your debut novel, which launched yesterday. And
Right.
that is so uncommon to my awareness to have a debut author that on top of audio. I would love to hear sort of your decision process and deciding to do that right off the bat like that and what that process has been like so far.
Absolutely. So I knew I wanted an audiobook as soon as possible because the characters in Dicurious are neurodivergent and I'm neurodivergent. And I know I listen to a lot of my books on audio.
Me
And
too.
not having an audiobook, there's a large portion of your audience that makes your book inaccessible for. So I knew that had to be a part of it. I looked into recording it myself and tried my hand at recording some things because I have a music background and I actually had the recording equipment. Then I discovered that, you know how Ev said about the 10,000 hours? There's 10,000 hours required to become good at publishing audiobooks. And that was not going to happen before Dicurious.
That
So
and
no, I'm good. Yeah,
every
yeah.
little sound in the house gets picked up. If the air conditioner unit upstairs goes on, it
Yes.
gets picked up. If
People-
a dog makes a collar noise, not even a bark, just a like rattling collar, it gets picked up.
Yes. A lot of people who record in their homes have a soundproof studio that they built themselves, which is cool. But yeah, it is a loud house, so that would be difficult. I'd be staying up all night. But we went to GCLS, like we mentioned
Got to
earlier.
meet a lot of the audiobooks.
They had two panels
Yeah.
about audiobooks that included some of the like top audiobook narrators in the genre. And I got to have breakfast with Abby Creighton, who is a very popular audiobook narrator, and she kind of gave me the list of what to do. And so I started looking at readers on who I might want to read it and made a short list, and then I sent an email. Like, a lot of narrators are available to work, you just have to contact them. And so I sent an email and I got interest. Lindsay Dorcas is who I ended up going with. She was the audiobook narrator for Love and Other Disasters by Anita Kelly, which is a book that I really love and I loved listening to. So I was super glad for that. And we met her at GCLS too, so that helped, and had a long conversation. It was after the awards night, just talking about audiobooks. But she hired, like, if you pay her directly, then she will give you a fully produced audio file. But you can also work with other companies such as Tantor Audio and was the other one Podium?
I think Podium was the other one. Yeah.
There are a few companies that you can actually go into a contract with, and they will front the cost of your audiobook. Of course, they get the profits, you get a share of the profits. But if that cost is prohibitive, there are ways around it. And that's what everyone at GCLS said. When I mentioned it, maybe it was too expensive right now, they're like, no, you can do it. And I got all that info.
That was one of the things I think Tantor, and I've heard people that had really good experience with them. There was a few that said they had bad experiences with them.
Those were good.
But most seem to be good. And if you didn't have the money up front to produce an audiobook, you are leaving money on the table. And they said that, especially for like the first one, they said, yeah, you're getting a very small percentage of the royalties, but they're literally fronting everything.
Yeah.
Like, and you do get a choice still of your
The narrator.
narrator. You still get to choose the narrator. So that's nice.
Nice.
You have some control still over it. If you can't afford to shell out, what is it, like
It depends.
3 to 5 for your book, depending on how long your book is. I'm just starting to look into a narrator for Gargoyle. She's talking me into it. So
Some narrators, you pay them per finished hour. So some
Mm-hmm.
people who are just getting started will give you a better rate. Also, if
Mhm.
they're really into your book, like I was, another reason why I ended up going with Lindsay is she's a D&D player. She loved the idea of my book. She was super excited to read the book. She starts recording it next month. So it'll probably be a few more months after that to finish production. But you want someone just like an editor, you want an audio narrator who likes your book and is passionate about your book and reads in your genre.
I'm
admit
so
it,
glad I
it was the
asked because
chainmail pauldron that she was
Oh
wearing
yeah,
she had like a black ball gown on
at the awards
at the
banquet
awards banquet, but then a rainbow chainmail dragon pauldron
on
that
her
was
shoulder. It was
rocking
cool.
on her shoulder. And I was just like, well, I guess that's going to be your D&D narrator.
Yeah.
I love that, and I'm so glad I asked because I'm absolutely going to go chase all of those recommendations and options that you mentioned. I would love to do audio for my books because, like you mentioned, I also almost exclusively consume audio. So I would love to jump on that, and it's fascinating to hear how you've done that. So we did touch on this earlier in the podcast episode, but I would love to hear for both of you what's coming up next in your author journey and what's on the horizon.
Yeah.
Do you want to go first?
Either way, I think yours is coming out like right when this is coming out. So you go first.
Okay, so I have after Librarian's Gargoyle, I am writing my short story piece for this year's anthology, which is called By the Sword.
By her sword.
Yeah, By Her Sword, sorry. So I'm working on that. And after that, I'll be working on the second book to that Gargoyle Stone Awakening series. And I think that is along with like the 12 other books that are boiling in my brain that I have notes on that are just sitting on the back seat all the time until I bring them. There are several pieces that I've written that she read that she's like, you need to make this sapphic. And I was just like, all right, at some point.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think that's what's on next for me. I'm excited to read the submissions. We've got a couple submissions that came in for By Her Sword already, which is great. They're not due in until we're taking submissions until the beginning of December.
Till December 1st. Yep.
Yep. So we got a couple in already. I'm excited to see what we get for this year. And we don't want to put out a doorstop, but on the other hand, I wouldn't mind a slightly chunkier book.
Yeah.
Where,
And
if any of my listeners are interested in submitting to the Sapphic Anthology, where could they find that?
Sunsetwavepress.com is our website, and there are links with information on how to submit. You can also find us on Facebook. We have an author group, and if you are interested in writing but don't know if you want to submit, you can still join the group and just kind of be a part of the community because we are doing one each year.
Excellent. I will make sure to link that in the episode descriptions for anyone
this
looking
year
for
it's
that.
all sword sapphics, and I believe we tentatively are looking at doing fire and ice for next year because the thing for that was at GCLS, Ice Queens were extremely popular as a trope. And we were like,
Nice.
okay, that would allow people to bring out their Ice Queens. So that'll probably be for 2026.
Yes.
I love that. So Erin, what's up on your horizon for your writing and your author career?
So as of this interview, which is in October, I am about to turn in the first draft to the editor for Kicks and Kisses, which is a karate sports romance. The two characters at the beginning absolutely detest each other, and they have a history, and they end up working at the same summer camp, and they end up in the same bunk. And this is of course they end up in the same bed because there's only one bed, because this is how it works in romance land. So hijinks ensue, and it's been a lot of fun. This is a piece I've had kind of just sitting on the back burner for a little while, and I'm glad to see it taking shape and going through edits. That will come out in April of 2025, and I already have the cover, and it's gorgeous. So
It is.
I'm excited about that. And then later in 2025, June 2025, will be By Her Sword, the anthology Ev mentioned. And that will be probably around 10 stories, but we'll see. We can be a little flexible. And then later in the year, I will release another yet unnamed book. I have 2 that I'm working on, and I have to decide. I already booked the editor and I already booked the cover artist. So I just have to decide which of those projects that I'll be working on. But indie gives you that freedom. So to
Yeah.
pursue what you want. So it's been great.
Awesome. So, Erin, where can folks find your website, your social media, anything like that online?
I have everything kind of in one place on Beacons, my Beacons link, which is beacons.ai. It's not an actual AI site, but beacons.ai/author Erin Branch has all of my social media and it has all of my links. I mentioned before our website, sunsetwavepress.com, has both information about me and about Ev. And all of those links can be found there as well. And as far as social media, I'm most active on Instagram and TikTok, but um, I actually need to make an author Facebook page. I still have my legal name on it, but it's okay. But I love interacting with readers and hearing from readers. So find me on those.
Great. And Evelyn, how about you?
Oh, I'm on the same website. So it's still Sunset Wave Press. We started Sunset Wave Press when we were doing the anthology to have a small press to do the anthology through.
Uh-huh.
And then of course, like evelynshine.com and erinbranch.com both link to that site as well. And then I have Beacons AI at Evelyn Shine will take you to all of my links and like anything that I have going on. It also has the submission link for the next anthology will always be on there,
Excellent.
along with links to buy books from Sunset Wave Press. So
Cool.
yep.
Well, thank you so much for coming on the show today. It was a delight talking with both of you, and I'm already looking forward to reading all of your stories to come. Thank you so much for coming on.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for listening to the Heartbound Editing Podcast. I look forward to bringing you more content to help you make a good story great so it can change lives and change your world. Follow along to hear more or visit my website linked in the description to learn how I can help you and your story to flourish. See you next time.